Hey y'all, friends, family, and folks. I'm trying to do a summary of our meeting last night, reviewing the book, The Origins of Totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt. And it's a difficult one, I think, to summarize this time. We had more members, well, I don't know if we call them members, we had more guests last night, so that was wonderful. And the community that we find with each other is absolutely the best part. And I just want to say we have such vibrant, capable, thoughtful people in our community. And I'm here to say to you, and you have them too. Wherever you're listening from, you have them too. You have good humans nearby. And really, we listened to, I don't know, a part of the first chapter. And of course, Hannah's referring to the Nazi movement. And the gist of what we took away was just what we know and why we're studying it in the first place is, boy, looks a little bit like today. And we did, maybe I can start in a methodical fashion to say that we did do a little bit of briefing on what's the difference between fascism and totalitarianism. And really, a member, I keep saying member, a guest, Richard, said, I think what we came down to is it's on a spectrum. And so fascism is really about white supremacy. I say white supremacy because that's the history of what we're reading, but it could be on anything. And that is just that you want nationalism and one race and control over the public. And totalitarianism is more about, we just want total control of absolutely everything, everywhere, including not just nationalism and pumping you up about this is our nation and this is what we stand for, and anybody who doesn't stand for what the leader stands for doesn't stand, because we get rid of them, right? Totalitarianism is similar. It's like it's a cousin to fascism. It will do all the same things as fascism, but it wants total control over public life, private life. And what's interesting about where we're at in today's world is, with all the algorithms, with all the Apple phones listening, with all the control over media, all of what's happening in today's world, we have more gadgets to observe the public. And if we can observe you, then guess what? We can make you fearful because we know exactly what you're doing. And if you're meeting the way we did last night, we can know about it. And so we all know that what it is that fascism, totalitarianism, imperialism, all of those control type regimes, they operate on fear. So when we get together to do a book review like this, are we there to learn the difference between fascism and totalitarianism? Well, it doesn't hurt. You need to know the enemy now, don't you? My good friend says, got to keep your enemies close because you got to know how big to dig the grave, and there's something about that. The enemy is this type of regime. And if you can hang in there, there's good parts, right? And that is, but what we talked about as well is it is a mob mentality. And I would like to ask, how many of you out there have watched a mob movie? How many of us have read a mob book? How many of us have read or watched documentaries or read biographies about mob people? They gain our interest, don't they? And one of the things that we talked about, because the conversation and the learning goes, it weaves, and that's wonderful. That's what we're there to do. So please bear with me as I weave. But one of the things we wove together, of course, is that Hannah Arendt speaks to the fact that whoever is going to lead this regime needs to be of mobster-like material. And of course, if you follow Charlie Angus here in Canada, he calls the regime gangsters. And it's not, it's a very good description. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with lawless type regimes that do not respect the institutions. And in fact, they are using the institutions to break down the institutions. But the fascinating part of some of this is that the fellow, the woman, the person, the character that leads these regimes has to show that they too are of a mob-like mentality. And even though you know that, it was interesting to hear an authority like Hannah Arendt verbalize it and articulate it in a way where she says they will do outrageous things because the regime actually benefits from having a person at the top that is willing to do outrageous things, because now nothing makes any sense, anything can happen, you can't predict it, and it instills fear. Because if they're willing to say publicly terrible things, which take your pick of the current regime in the United States of America, is willing to say crazy things where your jaw drops. And, my contribution to that was it's roadkill. You're driving by and you think, I don't want to look at roadkill. But there's something in you that just goes, well, I just want to see, is it a raccoon? I just want to see, make sure, I don't know what that is, right? It's human curiosity. Human nature goes, whoa. And so picking the exact person, and I mean picking, because when you get into the Epstein files, it certainly, in my opinion, and that's all it is, but it certainly seems like Epstein and Elon and Putin are all involved in choosing the leader of this regime. And part of it is you need to have a certain person who seems to think that anything they want, they can have, and there are no limits to their behavior and there are no consequences. I know we know this, but I am articulating it because we also have to go, well, ain't that something? Because that is exactly what it is, right? He's the roadkill. He's the roadkill of our society, and we do keep our eyes on him. And we do, and the other part is as a citizen, we feel obligated to have to watch and observe and be aware, and we do have to be. So where's the balance in that, right? And what part of it do we extract? And incidentally, in my opinion, I think we have leadership in Canada that's doing a good job of that. Weeding the buckwheat from, well, I won't finish that sentence here on this video. So having the perfect personality that is beyond thinks that they're beyond consequences and will push the envelope, push the envelope, push the envelope. That's what actually makes the regime stronger. And part of that, as I understand it from our discussion, in part is, well, it creates fear. You don't know what's coming next, and it creates chaos. You don't know what's coming next, and nothing is fitting into the norms. So there's one portion that we talked about and we extracted from our reading. We also extracted this, and I found this quite fascinating, and I'm excited to share it with you. And that is, Bill brought up that when we listened to this recount written in 1953 about World War II and all of its atrocities, but mainly the regime that made them happen, is that it was so important to remember that at that time there wasn't much individuality, because there wasn't the gadgets that we have, and we didn't know anyone outside of our neighborhood unless you were powerful and traveled places and so on. For the most part, we lived in smaller communities, and so we had less of a voice. we had less of an ability to see the bigger picture. We could only see parts of the picture. And so that part fascinated me, and the regime used that very well to their advantage. What we compared that to the regime of today is that we are highly individualized. And it is the gadget that I'm speaking to you on that allows both community as well and connection and sharing of information that also disconnects us, separates us, divides us, and allows us to have disinformation. So there's two sides to the coin, as there is with most creation in the world. There's the yin and the yang, right? You need darkness in order to birth light. You need light in order to dispel darkness. The yin and the yang of almost everything we create. And so we spoke about the fact, and an example that we gave, because we're all of a certain era, there was a time when we gathered in people's houses to watch TV, because not everybody had a TV, right? All my brothers and sisters went to down the road, and we had a lovely lady, can't be careful with people's names, but it's all good, and that she would invite the children in to watch Bonanza, right? And so then we said, we used to get up and you'd go to school the next day and say, did you watch Three's Company? And then you would talk about the episode. And the example given was, now you can say, did you see so-and-so? And we're all going, well, who's that? And who's that is because we all have individual feeds. And in fact, Lynn Watson, she shared an actual story, and we've been encouraged to do this. See your friend, see your foe, see your opposition, see your comrade through their feed, because you're going to see a whole different world than what you're seeing. And even though we share some things back and forth and we have things in common, that is very important to remember, is that we are highly individualized, which separates us, which brings us loneliness. And loneliness is a very key ingredient in any regime, right? Loneliness and fear. So I wanted to share with you, because the other thing we talked about was the bombardment, right? Steve Bannon is, in the emails of Epstein, is you can read to see that he talks about the fact that the leader of this regime is excellent because he's got loads of baggage. He does everything that everybody is shocked by, and every time he is going to cross the line that could maybe normally, in some cases, be a negative towards his regime forward, it will be very easy to spin it onto the positive. And the way we can do that is by, we've got a million stories about him and about the world that we can just keep telling you another story. And we talked about that in the last summary. It's story after story after story until you don't know what the story is. And, the millions of pages of the Epstein's file is a very good example of that. So Steve Bannon is, in the Epstein file, seen as suggesting and choosing this person to run this regime because he will be very easy to storify. That's a word, I made it up, right? It would be easy to make stories about him because something's always going on. So to Canadian, originally the woman politics girl, if you follow her at all, here we go again on feeds, she lives in America, but she was born in Canada. And then Joanna Johnson, who is the teacher who has a full-time job. She's an author, and she's Canadian, and she runs Unlearn 16 and does all these great little reels and teaches you about the political system of Canada and the United States, probably mostly the United States with what's happening on. But I want to give credit to the fact that the woman who does the politics girl and kitchen politics and so on, these are the things she pointed out that are happening in the States that say, well, if that isn't fascism, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, looks like a duck, it's probably a Donald Duck, right? So she said right now they have 3 times as much in detention centers as they had in Nazis starting in 1939 with buying up warehouses around the United States that will hold up to 10,000 beds. They are purchasing them everywhere, right? Incidentally, in BC, there are a lot of Canadians that boycotted some bigwig who was going to sell them one of his empty warehouses. And they got him to say, no, I'm not going to sell it because I've been called out and it can't be used for that in good conscience. The DHS brought in 17 new warehouses, which have, again, the 10,000 bed capacity. The media takeover, obviously, and how he has, called out every comedian. Dictators do not like to be made fun of. The interference in elections and stealing, rolling the polling lists and using coercion to get polling lists so that they can see who voted Democrat last time and keep you away from the polls this time, one way or another, right? Gonna get you one way or another. They're gonna find you, right? Brown shirts and Gestapo are, the equivalent of ICE, and no longer any justice system. It's loyal to the leader, not to the Constitution, and closing the Kennedy Center, right? That one for me is like, yeah, they cannot control art. They cannot control it. So many things you can control with fear, but you cannot control the creator within. And that's exciting to me. That's exciting to me. And, if it's totalitarianism and they can know every move you make, you still make songs and pictures in your head, right? And all the protesters talking about they're all lunatics and retaliation in the Insurrection Act. So when you look at all those things, you go, okay, if that's not a fascist state, I don't know what is. So we got to say what we see, and we got to tell what we hear. And so what's the antidote to that? The antidote to that is community, community, community. And so we may be doing a book review, and I may be giving you a summary here. But the bottom line is what's the most important part are the cinnamon rolls, the chocolate cake, the oatmeal cookies, and community, right? Community. It's sharing 3D instead of 2D, first of all. And these gadgets are good. I'm not slagging what I'm talking to you on, but controlling those and trying hard to, these two Canadian women talked about the fact that with the Epstein files and the fact that they are so horrific that, they talk about murder and torture and so on. And I forget how many thousands of documents are held behind because they are not suitable to the public. And you might say, well, who are they to decide that they're not suitable? I listened to a really educated man in that system, a lawyer, who said, trust me, they are not suitable. Meaning not that he has seen them, but the cases that he's worked on where he has to, you cannot break the mental disruption in your brain of seeing such horrific, terrible things. So it is to the protection of the public. My point is if it's all that, why is nobody going down? And what's great is we see, the London political ambassador to London. I don't know his name. He's resigned. One of the biggest law firms chairman has resigned. When people start resigning because they don't really want more to come out. But what I really want to talk about is the structure of that. And what Joanna Johnson had to say was, this is not new, and we should find comfort in that. What we're seeing in the Epstein files is not new. You look at Rome, you look at Japan dynasty. All of these kind of horrible acts are not new. What's new is now we can see it, and we can name it, and we can't turn away from it. What that also means is just what we talked about last night, and this is where I'll leave it, is people, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what we're seeing, is power uses the system to gain more power, then uses that power to gain more power, and then uses that power to gain more power. And the exact power that gives them power is also what protects them, is also what can bring them down. And we're in that point, perhaps, or getting close to where does it bring them down. And the problem with bringing it down by every elite person who's involved and every elite person who has something on somebody who can actually say something is it's a house of cards, and when it comes down, it's chaos. The only reason the system works is because of one thing: community. By the community in those power structures, you either have to play the power game or you have to speak out about it. And when you speak out about it, we've had enough people speak out about it over the years that the whole thing doesn't collapse. But now we've had so much blackmail and so much of the system being revealed that the system is likely to have to make a mess to clean a mess. It's going to be chaos, and we may have a lot of hardship, but the system is flawed and it's coming to light. And what will survive throughout that when we have AI come and so on, and you can't tell real from not real, is real. Getting right in front of one another and seeing each other 3D, not 2D. That will be the only thing we can count on. You know what it's like. You get something from Perolator on your phone and it says, click this link because your parcel's late. And then at the last minute you go, I don't think this is Perolator. And you don't click on it. The only thing we'll be able to trust is what's right in front of us. I just made a rhyme, right? The only thing we'll be able to trust is what's right in front of us. So let's remember that. Let's get in front of one another. Get out to the open mics that are in your community. Go to your neighbor and bring them a loaf of bread, right? Get out when you're shoveling and help someone else shovel their driveway. And you see this. We are doing this. And remember that the majority of the people are not corrupted by power. Right? We all have in all of our families power struggles and difficulties, and an uncle that we no longer invite, right? It's never going to be gone, but the antidote is community. And the community we're trying to raise is at the Bancroft Peace Museum. Come join us. It's a wonderful group of people, and it really does put a saving balm on all the soreness of the week where you're just going, I don't know what we're going to do. And when you get there and you see your brothers and your sisters, you go, I know what we're going to do. We're going to be well thought, well colluded, and combined in all of our efforts to love one another and to bring joy, peace, hope, and love to the world. That's the best antidote. So let's leave it there. I'm really glad if you followed along. If this has been beneficial to you, I hope you pass it along. We need this. We need this. So thank you. And if you're close by, come join us every Wednesday, 7 to 8. Canadian Peace Museum, right beside the new Tim Hortons on 28. Funny that it's new. It's been there like a long time. Okay. Cheers, everyone. Take care. And thank you.